It's my pleasure to introduce Seth Hauben, the VP of Business Development at OneValley, who will be moderating this conversation with Sarah Biller, founder of FinTech Sandbox and the Executive Director of Vantage Ventures. Seth, over to you.
Thank you, Alec. It is a pleasure to be here today. As Alec mentioned, my name is Seth Hauben. I'm the Vice President of Global Business Development and Partnerships at OneValley. It is a true honor and pleasure to share the virtual stage with Sarah Biller. Sarah has been at the forefront of innovation in financial services for 20 plus years. As Alec mentioned, as the Executive Director and founder of Vantage Ventures, as the founder of FinTech Sandbox, one of the most influential data providers for early stage FinTech startups, also as a board member of many AI startups, board member of a tech-enabled community bank, ex-founder herself, innovator, lead innovation at State Street, just a tremendous amount of experience and complete rock star in the space. And so I couldn't think of a better person to share this topic of how to be a FinTech startup in the emerging world of AI with. And so, Sarah, that is the background. As long as you're okay with it, I would love to jump right into the conversation.
Yeah, Seth, thank you and the OneValley team for having me. You forgot to mention we're friends.
Also friends, so personal and professional honor and privilege to be here. And so, again, both from the Boston ecosystem, I've spent a lot of time kind of building the community locally in Boston. And so tremendously excited for the conversation. And Sarah, I'd love to start with a general kind of state of the state question, and then, certainly get more specific and more startup oriented. But I had the opportunity this year, I was at the World Economic Forum, and obviously AI was one of the major topics. And I had the chance to listen to the CEOs and the heads of Barclays, JP Morgan, Blackstone, MIT leadership, Microsoft, and the who's who on the topic. And, the general consensus was all the same, which is AI has a chance to be, the most profound technical advancement of our lifetimes and generation. But when asked kind of what that meant in practicality, it was kind of a wait and see. And so I would love to just kind of set the stage with what's the current AI adoption in financial services, and kind of where do you see it headed in the next handful of years?
Yeah, let's start with the current state. And I'd say, Seth, in a very simple word, it's table stakes. When you ask about sort of the adoption metrics, we always look to outside validation of our own belief and experience. And I recently read a survey conducted by The Economist, quite level-headed approach to surveying, in this case, bank tech executives globally. And remarkably, 85% responded that they have a clear strategic remit and plan for the implementation and use of AI. And this was specific, and it's important, in new products and services. So even our incumbents, this 2,000-year-old industry, actually it's 4,000, we'll talk about that probably shortly, it itself is driving towards the adoption of AI. And so I think what we can say is about the current state is AI is rapidly being incorporated, if not almost holistically within the industry, certainly in the innovation state. And that ability to execute on the use of AI, just like you heard from all those world leaders, is going to separate the winners from the losers in this next cycle of financial services innovation.
No, certainly kind of really important to hear. And, again, execution is a common theme, and no different than kind of prior to the AI days where, a good idea gets you so far, but kind of proper execution, especially in a regulated environment. And so with that as kind of the backdrop, I would love to shift gears a little bit and talk specifically about FinTech Sandbox. This is an organization you helped found, I think, over 10 years ago, impacted hundreds of startups by providing access to what was historically very costly data to better scale their businesses. And so I'd love to give you the opportunity to kind of share a little bit about the organization, the story, and really how it's working with the next generation of AI startups.
Yeah, Seth, thank you. I will say right off the bat, I'm the co-founder with David Jagan, and I heard that you have Ali on later from Fidelity, and David is the managing director of F Prime, Fidelity's venture arm for fintech. And quite a visionary. And, we actually did do exactly what you said. We envisioned a world where innovation was not stalled, where startups were not encumbered, as I was in my own company. I built a predictive analytics platform for institutional debt investors that had a baseline use of AI. But if you don't have the data to feed your models, or you don't have the data to help inform the customer decisioning in fintech, you don't have a company. And so FinTech Sandbox was it's a labor of love. It's a not-for-profit. It's very strange in financial services to talk to someone about, and we don't make any money. They're like, what are you doing? But nonetheless, nobody told this bumblebee we couldn't fly. A decade ago, set out to work with the most significant data providers globally, who at that time had the lock on market data sets. And we had a very positive response. Fast forward to today, a decade later, we've supported over 300 high growth, high impact fintech startups, and increasingly startups that are outside of financial services, but embedding fintech in other industries, with free access to these data sets. It's unlimited for 6 months. And it gives you a chance to really explore and develop your thesis. And it's been an important catalyst, as you said, and humbly so, I say that, to this innovation cycle. And so it's been really a pleasure to be in a position to see a decade of the use of data, and recognize too that the innovators in financial services today are at an inflection point, because the application of AI, as you know, requires more and more data sets, and oftentimes diverse data sets that, again, are difficult to procure.
No, and I'd like to just kind of double click into the data side, and as it becomes kind of more relevant and prevalent and important, and transparency, and just kind of the role you see FinTech Sandbox playing in kind of this next chapter.
Yeah, well, I certainly, we see our next decade of success really enabling us to further embed within the fintech innovation sector. We started in Boston, where you and I know one another, and thank you for being that foundation, that cornerstone to our community. Seth, when we were building it, there were like you, me, babe, and like 2 others. It was not a big community, but today it's about 5,000 entrepreneurs. There's lots of initiatives. We have, with intentionality, moved beyond sort of the financial centers that we well serve within the United States and North America. The next generation of innovation, of course, is happening. It's in Europe. It's happening on the continent of Africa. It's happening in LATAM. So our vision and our growth trajectory and support of this innovation cycle for us envisions being more active globally, and not leaving behind our local supporting structure. It also is it's a need to develop relationships with non-traditional data providers, those who have not historically seen themselves really ripe for financial services, but we know today they are. A good example of that is we have a really incredible relationship with the Weather Channel, right? So you've got the next generation of portfolio analytics, insurtech, even if you think about it, lending into the commercial real estate market. You have a lot of reasons where weather has some variability. So that's but one example, but that's where I see us heading: global and into the larger, more diverse data sets to meet the emerging needs of the innovators.
No, really fascinating to hear, and especially the kind of diverse data and how it all kind of comes back into the financial space. And so, getting to kind of the meat and the potatoes of the conversation on, again, how to be a fintech startup in the emerging world of AI. And so, as someone who's engaged with hundreds of startups through investing, supporting, and operating,
Yep.
Any key kind of lessons you've learned or advice you would give kind of people in the audience who are just getting started on, again, how to think about kind of AI-driven technologies?
Yeah, I think about the AI-driven startups we're even working with in FinTech Sandbox, and then my larger portfolio of companies that I do board work with, and I'm directly invested. And I think what we see now, if you're launching a fintech, or even if you're a fintech that has some maturing capability in AI, the criticality of paying attention to compliance and the rigor in which the regulators are looking at the application of AI, it cannot be understated. That's incredibly important. At FinTech Sandbox, we support a company called Bond.ai. They provide needs assessments to banks, meaning historically, and I'm a board director on a community bank, you would wait until your customer came to you to say that they needed some financial service, short-term working capital loan, some sort of expansion in the way that their deposits were placed in an overnight securities environment. Bond AI looks forward and helps to do a needs prediction, a needs assessment. This is brand new for the industry, right? This is a capability that we had hoped for 2 decades ago when we first started seeing like Jim Simons at Renaissance Technologies apply AI to his quant fund. Now it's trickling down through the other large categories of fintech. So I think you've got to be mindful that the regulators themselves are still uncertain about the application of AI, its uses, its testability. So compliance really matters. And I think the other side of this rapid digitization of financial services, particularly as a fintech, is you have to be mindful of your cybersecurity. You have to recognize that the aperture of risk every time you're now furthering the adoption of technology just exponentially increases. So compliance and cyber are two lessons that we continue to stress to our innovators, ones that often aren't top of mind when you have the next generation of products you're building.
No, and it's certainly just, fantastic points. I'm curious your thoughts, Sarah, on best practices and ways you've seen to mitigate those risks in terms of transparent models, ethical models, unbiased models, or what it's going to take to really get the regulated space comfortable with these models.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is to really contemplate where your data that you're using for your applications are being stored. And remember, at the end of the day, we laughed about it at the beginning, but it is true. We've got 4,000 years of moving money around, right? I mean, the Babylonians were banking farmers and merchants. We do the same thing today. We lend, but where the Babylonians were using clay tablets and, kind of carving in, if you will, the old general ledger, which is true. It was a cuneiform tablet. Today, you're doing that digitally. Your data lakes matter, your data storage matters, your ability for tracing the movement of money is so critically important to the regulators and to your own success as you're using technology. When I was in, traditional industry places like State Street, you had that joke about the kind of fat thumbs where you accidentally made errors. You cannot do that today in Digitability. So I think that's the first thing I would say is just one, the advice would be make sure you're securing your data, you have traceability, and you have reportability. The second thing that on the other side of that is what we think about when we look at the application of AI, and that's the black box effect of AI. Today, you have a lot of challenges about explainability. You have uncertainty about the results. It is true to say that we are really, even though we're quite some time in the building of AI applications, we're still in the earliest stages of understanding how it works. And so in that case, I think the other thing to be mindful of if you're a fintech using AI is trying to, again, understand your data parameters, what your models are doing with the boundaries of that data. You have highly trained individuals within your firm who can spot patterns, good and bad, that might infer that there's some bias or other challenges coming out of your AI models that you can correct for. And I think those are the two lessons I would take. They're quite simple to talk about, but they're rather complex and difficult to implement. But it's important as we go into this rapidly rapid cycle of innovation. I mean that sincerely. It's moving much faster than it was a decade ago.
Yeah, no, I think critical points in the pace, but the pace plus kind of again thinking about compliance and regulation, and how that all plays in. And so, Sarah, I know FinTech Sandbox is a great resource. I'm curious if there are any other resources that jump out to you for early stage founders that might be worth surfacing for the audience.
Well, I'm super stoked. This is not a commercial. I did not know what Alex was going to say when we kicked off, but who knew that OneValley was beginning to introduce toolkits for the adoption and deployment of AI for innovators? That's important. Some people are going to cringe when I say this, but when I started my company, we were early adopters in AI. And I mean that in loose quotes. Everyone can see my air quotes, because we were one of the first to deploy random forest, which really was a very crude ML capability. But we were applying it to our predictions of credit risks widening and tightening. And it was really important at the time. I can do more things on my phone in two clicks than I could for an 18-month coding session that cost us a couple $1 million to embed that. So I think that you got to avail yourselves of the tools that are available to you, these data science tools that the rest of the industry has spent millions of dollars creating. They're now can be embedded in your everyday workflow when you partner with places like OneValley. AWS has a toolkit for data science in one of their instances. So you have those opportunities as fintech entrepreneurs. I think the other thing that's really fascinating to me is the rise of the venture firms, that are actually raising money from industry partners. So the bank techs, the FinTops of the world, who are bringing those banks to the table to run alongside the entrepreneur. That's another place to really find yourself in those ecosystems. So all in, it's a vastly different world of innovation for fintech entrepreneurs, and it's what makes it so exciting.
It is certainly exciting, and I can't believe we are almost out of time. So I would love to give you kind of the last word here, and just again, if there's any last message for the audience on this topic of just how to be a fintech startup in the emerging world of AI.
Yeah, Seth, I'm going to do something that I hope, again, just want to do it from where it comes from, which is every fintech entrepreneur out there has an opportunity to do immense good. And it's good business today to be building applications that contemplate the broader breadth of customers available to you, the broader opportunity to move capital into places that are solving intractable problems. And so fintech entrepreneurs have a chance today to really embed like frictionless payments into healthcare and widen the aperture of opportunity for people to get great healthcare. You can do point of sale lending at really, at the moment in which someone's coming up and they're a construction worker and they're buying supplies at whatever retailer that they're buying supplies. So don't forget that fintech is an application upon itself. It is so significant to multiply the effects of what you can do and do good. And so I'm just so honored, Seth, to sit with you all today, to think about where we're heading and to think about what the innovators on this call and your partners can do to really make us a better world. So thank you.
Sarah, the fastest 20 minutes I've had in a long time. I wish we had more time. We got a lot of great content ahead. It's certainly been an absolute honor and privilege to share the stage with you on behalf of the audience, OneValley, Seeger, the organizers. Just thank you for taking the time to share your insights and expertise. And with that, Alec, back to you.